incredibly strange phenomenon is happening. A mysterious gravitational disturbance upsets our sun system. Jupiter is now moving at high speed towards the sun. What would happen if a gas giant collided with an even larger star? How will Jupiter reach the center of our sun system? Will the sun become even larger and more powerful? And how could this be a potentially deadly situation for us here on Earth? Behold an if, and we wonder what would happen if the sun swallowed Jupiter. Well, before we witness the biggest collision in the history of our solar system, it would be interesting to explore possible scenarios that could lead to this event. For Jupiter to crash on the sun, something really extraordinary would have to happen. Its orbit should be radically altered by gravitational disturbance. And not just any. A huge disturbance. The most likely culprits would be a wandering star or a black hole passing dangerously near our solar system. And these things should be really huge. At least twice as massive as our sun. By drifting into interstellar space, these objects would eventually interact with Jupiter's gravitational field. With a mass about 318 times greater than that of the Earth, Jupiter has an extended gravitational field. If this wandering star or black hole were to exert attraction or transfer a large amount of kinetic energy to Jupiter, its orbit would become increasingly eccentric. But there's a big hit here. In one way or another, these gigantic rogue objects should move on to a specific moment when they would only affect Jupiter. Otherwise, it would not be the only planet in our neighborhood to leave its orbit and move towards an imminent thermal death. After billions of years orbiting the sun at an average distance of 778 million kilometers, Jupiter would begin its deadly plunge to our star. But that would not happen overnight. It could take years, decades, even centuries. The gas giant should travel this immense distance by accelerating more and more under the immense attraction of the sun's gravity. This phenomenon, known as spiral orbital disintegration, would cause Jupiter to orbit more and more tightly until it reached annihilation. The next phase of this planetary destruction would occur when Jupiter is close enough to be torn. That's what we call the rock limit. And for a body as large as Jupiter, it would happen about 900,000 kilometers from the sun. At such a distance, the planet would probably be locked by tides, just like Mercury. This means that it would rotate completely on its axis for every complete revolution around the sun. But for this to happen before Jupiter begins to disintegrate, its speed of rotation should also undergo significant changes. At present, Jupiter rotates completely every 10 hours. But to be really locked by the tide at this distance, its speed of rotation should more than double. If this were to happen, only one phase of Jupiter would be constantly facing the sun, and each side would experience very different gravitational forces. The day side or the near side is stretching more and more. Jupiter would no longer look like a giant gas sphere, but would be rather oblong and elliptical. One could almost imagine Jupiter passing through a process similar to spaghettification, as when an object crosses the horizon of events of a black hole, although in a less extreme way. But that does not mean that it is not the end of time for our greatest neighbor. Its atmosphere would be torn off, forming an incandescent ring of dust and gas around the sun. That's what we call an accretion disk. And that's where Jupiter's existential dive would become really interesting. The planet and the sun are mainly made up of hydrogen and helium. So, As Jupiter is absorbed, would the Sun become larger and more powerful? Since our planet is already warming at a dangerous pace, it could sound alarm bells. But don't worry too much. This collision is not about to change much in terms of solar energy production. As great as Jupiter is, it represents only about 0.1% of the mass of the Sun. The impact would therefore not be extremely significant. For a short period, the Sun could shine a little stronger by converting all Jupiter's energy. That would be the first effect that this whole scenario would have here on Earth. You'd get a little more sun during the day. And the night sky would be a little brighter when you look at Jupiter's last days, before it disappears into the Sun. The most important effect would come from Jupiter's huge gravitational void in our solar system. For billions of years, Jupiter acted as a cosmic vacuum, attracting comets and asteroids of all shapes and sizes. Without its presence, the Earth would find itself exposed to new dangers. The risk of impact of large objects, called planet killers, would increase considerably, and that would be one of the greatest existential risks to all forms of life on our planet. But probabilities are just probabilities, aren't they? We could always find ourselves on the trajectory of one of these cosmic objects. I wonder who should worry us the most. Well, that's a story for someone else. What if Subtitles Canadian Broadcasting Corporation